Ships vanish without a trace. Planes disappear from radar. The Bermuda Triangle, 500,000 square miles of mystery. There is a region of the North Atlantic Ocean, roughly bounded by the south tip of Florida, the island of Bermuda, and the island of Puerto Rico, that has generated more mystery, more speculation, and more outright terror than any other geographical feature on the surface of the Earth. It covers approximately 500,000 square miles of open ocean, an area roughly the size of the state of Alaska. It is one of the most heavily trafficked stretches of water in the world, crossed daily by commercial shipping, military vessels, private yachts, cruise ships, and hundreds of aircraft. It is, by any objective maritime standard, an ordinary if sometimes dangerous region of ocean. And yet, for more than half a century, it has been known by a name that evokes supernatural dread: the Bermuda Triangle. The name itself has become a metaphor. When something vanishes inexplicably, when objects or people disappear without a trace, we say they have entered the Bermuda Triangle. The phrase has passed from geography into language itself. The legend of the Bermuda Triangle holds that ships and aircraft passing through this region disappear at an abnormally high rate under circumstances that defy conventional explanation. The disappearances are characterized by several recurring features that distinguish them, according to believers, from ordinary maritime accidents. They occur suddenly and without warning, often in calm weather. The vessels leave no wreckage, no oil slicks, no debris fields, and no bodies. Radio communications cease abruptly with no distress signals, and search operations find nothing, as if the ocean itself has swallowed the vessels whole. These characteristics, the completeness of the vanishings, the absence of physical evidence, the apparent impossibility of so many vessels simply ceasing to exist, have fueled theories ranging from the scientifically plausible to the fantastically extraordinary. The theories proposed to explain the Bermuda Triangle form a spectrum that stretches from solid science to pure fantasy. At the scientific end, researchers have proposed methane gas hydrate eruptions from the ocean floor, which could theoretically reduce water density and sink ships instantly. Oceanographers have studied rogue waves, massive, seemingly spontaneous ocean waves that can exceed 100 feet in height and capsize even large vessels without warning. Geophysicists have examined magnetic anomalies that might interfere with compass navigation. At the other end of the spectrum, theorists have proposed underwater alien bases, portals to other dimensions or time periods, the energy of lost Atlantean crystal technology rising from the ocean floor, vortexes in the fabric of space-time, and the intervention of supernatural forces that guard the entrance to a hidden underwater civilization. The earliest cited anomaly in the Bermuda Triangle dates to 1492, when Christopher Columbus, on his first voyage across the Atlantic, reported strange compass readings and unexplained lights in the area around the Bahamas. Columbus's logs describe the compass needle deviating from true north, a phenomenon that alarmed his already nervous crew and threatened to provoke a mutiny. Modern analysis has explained the compass anomaly as a natural consequence of the region's position relative to the agonic line, the line where magnetic north and true north coincide. In 1492, this line passed through the Bahamas, meaning compass readings in the area were actually more accurate than elsewhere, not less. But the image of Columbus's spinning compass, recorded in the journal of the most famous voyage in European history, provided the Bermuda Triangle legend with an irresistibly ancient pedigree. The region's genuine navigational hazards are formidable and well documented by maritime authorities. The Gulf Stream, one of the most powerful ocean currents in the world, flows through the western portion of the triangle at speeds of up to 5 knots, capable of carrying debris, wreckage, and even large vessels rapidly away from their last known positions. The region lies in Hurricane Alley, the corridor of warm Atlantic water through which the majority of Atlantic hurricanes pass during the June to November hurricane season. Sudden, violent thunderstorms can develop with little warning over the warm tropical waters. The shallow waters of the Bahamas, with their coral reefs and sandbars, have trapped and destroyed vessels for centuries. And the sheer vastness of the open ocean means that a vessel in distress may be hundreds of miles from the nearest search and rescue assets. Despite these real and well-understood hazards, the Bermuda Triangle legend persists because it makes a specific and testable claim that the disappearance rate within the triangle is abnormally high compared to other ocean regions with similar traffic levels. This claim has been tested repeatedly by maritime authorities, insurance companies, and independent researchers. The results are consistent and unambiguous. Lloyd's of London, one of the world's largest and most data-driven maritime insurance markets, has stated that its loss rates for ships crossing the Bermuda Triangle are no higher than for any other comparable ocean region. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the U.S. government's primary ocean science agency, has stated that there is no evidence that mysterious disappearances occur with any greater frequency in the Bermuda Triangle than in any other large, well-traveled area of the ocean. Australian scientist Carl Kruszelnicki has provided perhaps the most concise debunking. The Bermuda Triangle, he notes, is one of the busiest ocean regions in the world. When you account for the enormous volume of traffic passing through the region, thousands of ships and aircraft every day, the number of incidents, while tragic, is entirely proportional to the traffic volume. A higher absolute number of incidents does not indicate a higher rate of incidents. It indicates a busy stretch of ocean where the law of large numbers guarantees that bad things will occasionally happen, just as they do on busy highways. The Bermuda Triangle is not anomalously dangerous. It is anomalously famous. But statistics have never been a match for a good story, and the Bermuda Triangle is one of the best stories ever told. Its power lies not in its facts, but in its imagery. The empty ocean, the abandoned ship, the radio transmission that cuts off mid-sentence, the aircraft that vanishes from radar without a trace. These images tap into something deep in the human psyche, our ancient fear of the ocean, our horror of disappearance without explanation, our suspicion that the natural world contains forces we do not understand and cannot control. The Bermuda Triangle is, in this sense, the perfect mystery, vast enough to contain any theory, deep enough to hide any evidence, and old enough to feel permanent. The construction of the Bermuda Triangle legend is itself a fascinating story, a case study in how manufactured mysteries are built from selective evidence, repeated without verification, and sustained by the human appetite for the unexplained. The legend was not discovered through investigation, it was invented through publication.
A series of books and articles spanning from the 1950s to the 1970s assembled a curated collection of maritime incidents, stripped them of context and conventional explanation, and presented them as evidence of a single coherent supernatural phenomenon. Understanding how this was done and why it was so effective is essential to understanding not just the Bermuda Triangle, but the broader mechanisms by which conspiracy theories and manufactured mysteries are created and maintained.
This is the complete story of the Bermuda Triangle, from Columbus's spinning compass to Lloyd's of London's insurance tables, from the disappearance of Flight 19 to the discovery of the Bimini Road, from Charles Berlitz's 20 million copy bestseller to Lawrence Kusche's devastating deconstruction of the legend. It is a story about real ships and real planes, about real people who really died at sea, and about how their tragedies were transformed into the raw material for the most famous geographical mystery in human history. It is also a story about the construction of belief itself, about how selective evidence, compelling narrative, and the irresistible human appetite for mystery can create a legend that survives every attempt to debunk it. No single incident has done more to create the Bermuda Triangle legend than the disappearance of Flight 19 on December 5, 1945. The case has everything a mystery needs: experienced military pilots, a routine training mission that turns into a nightmare, increasingly desperate radio transmissions, a rescue plane that also vanishes, and 27 men who simply cease to exist. No wreckage, no bodies, no explanation. Flight 19 is the Bermuda Triangle's foundational text, its Rosetta Stone, the case that every subsequent author and documentarian returns to as proof that something genuinely anomalous occurs in this stretch of ocean. It is also, when examined in detail, a case that has a perfectly plausible conventional explanation, one that the Navy itself identified in its investigation, and one that reveals the danger not of supernatural forces, but of navigational error, equipment failure, and the unforgiving mathematics of fuel consumption over open ocean. Flight 19 was a routine training exercise conducted from the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station in Florida. 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, each carrying a crew of 3, were assigned a navigation exercise designated Problem Number 1. The flight plan called for the aircraft to fly east over the ocean, conduct practice bombing runs on a target at Hen and Chicken Shoals, then continue east and north before turning back west to return to Fort Lauderdale. The total distance was approximately 320 miles, well within the Avenger's range of approximately 1,000 miles. The flight was led by Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, an experienced combat pilot with approximately 2,500 hours of flight time. The 13 other crew members included student pilots and enlisted aircrew completing their training.
The flight departed at approximately 2:14 in the afternoon under clear skies and good visibility. The practice bombing runs were completed without incident. The problems began approximately 90 minutes into the flight when Taylor reported to Fort Lauderdale Tower that his compasses were malfunctioning and that he believed the flight was over the Florida Keys, approximately 100 miles south of their actual position. Taylor's navigational error appears to have been caused by a combination of factors. His compass failure left him dependent on dead reckoning and visual identification of landmarks, and the islands of the Bahamas, viewed from altitude, closely resembled the Florida Keys. Convinced he was over the Keys, Taylor turned the flight northeast, a heading that, from the Keys, would have taken them back to Fort Lauderdale, but from their actual position took them further out over the open Atlantic. Over the next several hours, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Radio communications between Flight 19 and Fort Lauderdale became increasingly garbled as the aircraft moved further from the coast. Taylor, still convinced he was over the Florida Keys, repeatedly rejected suggestions from other pilots in the flight to turn west toward the Florida coastline. His certainty about his position, a phenomenon that navigation experts call a mental model fixation, overrode the conflicting evidence from his fellow pilots and from ground controllers who could hear his transmissions but could not establish clear enough communication to provide definitive guidance. The weather deteriorated from clear skies to overcast conditions with turbulence, further reducing visibility and compounding the navigational confusion. The last confirmed radio transmission from Flight 19 was received at approximately 7:04 in the evening, nearly 5 hours after takeoff. By this time, the aircraft had been airborne long enough to have exhausted their fuel reserves. The Avenger was a robust aircraft, designed to survive carrier landings and combat damage, but without power, it would ditch rapidly in open ocean. Night had fallen, the seas were rough, and even if the crews survived ditching, the chances of rescue in the dark, in the pre-satellite, pre-GPS era, were extremely slim. No wreckage from any of the 5 aircraft was ever found, a fact that conspiracy theorists find inexplicable, but that maritime experts consider entirely consistent with a ditching in deep water, where debris can be scattered over hundreds of square miles by currents and sink in water over a mile deep.
The tragedy was compounded by the loss of the rescue aircraft sent to search for Flight 19, a PBM Mariner flying boat carrying 13 crew members, departed at approximately 7:27 in the evening to search the area where Flight 19 was believed to have gone down. The Mariner never returned. At approximately 7:50 in the evening, the crew of a merchant ship, the SS Gaines Mills, reported seeing an explosion in the sky and subsequently sailing through an oil slick and debris on the water. The PBM Mariner had a documented history of fuel vapor accumulation in its fuel tanks, earning it the unofficial nickname the Flying Gas Tank. The Navy's investigation concluded that the Mariner most likely exploded due to a fuel vapor ignition, a known mechanical vulnerability, rather than a supernatural event. The Navy's official investigation into Flight 19 concluded that the loss was caused by Lieutenant Taylor's navigational error and his refusal to accept corrections from other pilots and ground controllers. The Board of Investigation initially assigned blame to Taylor, but his mother protested vigorously, and the finding was subsequently changed to causes or reasons unknown, a bureaucratic compromise that would prove devastatingly useful to conspiracy theorists. The phrase causes or reasons unknown, applied to a military aviation incident, sounded far more mysterious than the investigation's actual findings warranted. It implied that the Navy itself could not explain what happened, when in reality the Navy had a clear explanation, but had been pressured into softening its language. The conspiracy interpretations of Flight 19 range from the moderately speculative to the wildly fantastic.
Some theorists propose that an electromagnetic anomaly in the region disrupted Taylor's compass and the flight's instruments, causing the navigational error and then interfering with the aircraft's ability to function normally. Others propose that the aircraft entered a time warp or dimensional portal, which explains why no wreckage was ever found. The planes are not on the bottom of the ocean, but in another time or dimension entirely. Still others suggest alien abduction, with the aircraft and their crews taken by extraterrestrial beings operating from an underwater base in the region. Each theory addresses the same emotional need, the refusal to accept that experienced pilots can get lost, that the ocean can swallow aircraft without leaving traces, and that sometimes tragedy has mundane explanations.
The disappearance of Flight 19 established the narrative template that would define the Bermuda Triangle legend for decades. Experienced operators, routine mission, sudden unexplained loss, no wreckage, no explanation. Every subsequent case would be judged against this template, and cases that fit the pattern would be highlighted, while cases that did not, vessels lost in storms, aircraft with known mechanical problems, ships that were later found, would be quietly omitted. Flight 19 was the seed crystal around which the entire Bermuda Triangle mythology crystallized, and its power lay not in its inexplicability, but in the emotional resonance of its story. Young men sent on a routine mission who flew into the unknown and never came home. The Bermuda Triangle legend was not built on a single incident, but on the cumulative weight of dozens of maritime disappearances spanning over a century. These cases, compiled by successive authors and documentarians, created a catalog of vanishings that, when presented together, stripped of context and narrated with appropriate drama, seemed to establish an undeniable pattern of supernatural danger. The ghost ships of the Bermuda Triangle form a roster of maritime tragedies that have been transformed from individual incidents with individual explanations into exhibits in a case for the unexplainable. Examining the most prominent cases reveals both the genuine tragedy of lives lost at sea and the systematic process by which those tragedies were manipulated into evidence for a mystery that does not exist. The USS Cyclops remains the most genuinely mysterious case in the Bermuda Triangle dossier. The Cyclops was a United States Navy cargo ship, 542 feet long, carrying a crew of approximately 306 officers, sailors, and passengers. In March 1918, during World War I, the Cyclops departed Bahia, Brazil, with a full cargo of manganese ore, a heavy metallite cargo that brought the ship dangerously close to its maximum displacement. The ship made one stop in Barbados, where it took on additional coal, and then sailed north toward Baltimore. It was never seen again. No distress signal was sent, no wreckage was found, no bodies were recovered. The disappearance of 306 people aboard a large military vessel remains the largest non-combat loss of life in United States Navy history. The most likely explanation for the Cyclops loss, according to naval historians, involves a combination of factors. The ship was heavily overloaded with manganese ore. It was already known to have structural problems, including a cracked cylinder in one of its two engines, and it sailed into an area where severe storms were reported. The heavy ore cargo would have made the ship dangerously top-heavy, reducing its stability in rough seas. If the ship took on water through its large open cargo hatches, which were not designed for the kind of heavy ore it was carrying, it could have capsized rapidly, sinking before the crew could send a distress signal.
The depth of the ocean in the area, over 3 miles in some sections, would ensure that no wreckage reached the surface. This explanation is not certain, but it is consistent with known facts about the ship's condition, cargo, and the ocean conditions in the region. The Marine Sulphur Queen disappeared in February 1963 while carrying a cargo of molten sulfur from Beaumont, Texas to Norfolk, Virginia. The ship and its 39 crew members vanished without a trace in the Straits of Florida. A subsequent Coast Guard investigation revealed that the Marine Sulphur Queen was a converted World War II tanker that had been inadequately modified for carrying molten sulfur, a hazardous cargo that must be maintained at extremely high temperatures. The ship had a history of fires and structural problems. The investigation concluded that the most likely cause was a catastrophic structural failure or explosion related to the volatile cargo. But in Bermuda Triangle literature, the Marine Sulphur Queen is presented simply as a ship that vanished mysteriously. The hazardous cargo, the known structural problems, and the Coast Guard's findings are omitted. The British South American aircraft, Star Tiger and Star Ariel, provide the aviation counterpart to the maritime disappearances. The Star Tiger, an Avro two-door Mark IV, disappeared on January 30, 1948, while flying from the Azores to Bermuda with 31 passengers and crew. The Star Ariel, a similar aircraft, disappeared on January 17, 1949, while flying from Bermuda to Kingston, Jamaica, with 20 passengers and crew. Neither aircraft sent a distress signal. Neither was ever found. The Avro two-door was subsequently withdrawn from passenger service due to concerns about its airworthiness. The aircraft type had a troubled history and was considered unreliable by many pilots. But in Bermuda Triangle literature, the two disappearances are presented as mysterious vanishings of apparently airworthy aircraft.
The Ellen Austin case is perhaps the most revealing example of how the Bermuda Triangle legend was constructed from unreliable material. According to the standard telling, the Ellen Austin, an American schooner, encountered an unmanned derelict ship adrift in the Triangle in 1881. The Ellen Austin's captain put a prize crew aboard the derelict to sail it to port, but the ship disappeared. The derelict was found again, once more unmanned, the prize crew having vanished without explanation. In some versions of the story, a second prize crew was placed aboard, and they too vanished. The story is dramatic, eerie, and perfectly constructed for a mystery narrative. The problem is that no reliable historical documentation of the Ellen Austin incident has ever been found. The earliest source for the story dates to a 1944 book over 60 years after the alleged event and contains details that have never been verified from maritime records. The pattern across these cases is consistent. Each involves a genuine maritime or aviation tragedy, real ships with real crews, real aircraft with real passengers, real lives lost. Each has at least one plausible conventional explanation: overloading, structural failure, hazardous cargo, poor airworthiness, navigational error, severe weather. But in each case, Bermuda Triangle authors systematically strip away the conventional explanations, omit the relevant context, and present the bare facts of disappearance as if they were inherently mysterious. A ship that sinks because it is overloaded with heavy ore in a storm becomes a ship that vanishes without a trace in calm waters. An aircraft known to be unreliable becomes a perfectly sound plane that simply disappears. The cumulative effect of this selective presentation is powerful. Any single disappearance, examined in context, might not seem particularly mysterious, but when dozens of carefully curated cases are presented together, all stripped of their conventional explanations, all occurring within the same loosely defined geographic region, all narrated with the same tone of baffled wonder, the effect is overwhelming. The mind perceives a pattern. The pattern demands an explanation, and since the conventional
explanations have been systematically removed from the presentation, the explanation must be extraordinary. Supernatural forces, alien intervention, dimensional portals, Atlantean technology. The Bermuda Triangle legend is, at its core, an exercise in omission. What you are not told is more important than what you are told.
The human cost of the legend is worth acknowledging. The men of the USS Cyclops, the crew of the Marine Sulphur Queen, the passengers and crew of the Star Tiger and Star Ariel, the pilots and crew of Flight 19. These were real people with real families who suffered real loss. Their deaths have been transformed, without their consent, into entertainment, into exhibits in a carnival of mystery that trivializes their tragedies by stripping them of their real causes and real contexts. The Bermuda Triangle legend does not honor the dead. It exploits them, converting their deaths into data points in a manufactured mystery that serves the commercial interests of authors and media producers. The real memorial for these lost souls is not a conspiracy theory, but an honest accounting of how they died, and a recognition that the ocean, even without supernatural assistance, is a genuinely dangerous and unforgiving environment. The Bermuda Triangle was not discovered, it was invented. The mystery did not emerge from investigation, but from publication. Understanding this distinction is essential to understanding how conspiracy theories and manufactured mysteries function, because the Bermuda Triangle is one of the clearest examples in modern history of a narrative being constructed from carefully selected evidence, amplified through successive publications, and sustained by an audience that preferred mystery to explanation. The first significant publication was an Associated Press article by journalist Edward Van Winkle Jones in 1950, which described a pattern of unexplained disappearances in the Atlantic region south and east of Florida. Jones compiled several maritime and aviation incidents and suggested that an unusual pattern might exist, though he did not give the phenomenon a name or propose any specific explanation. In 1952, author George X. Sand published an article in Fate magazine, a publication dedicated to paranormal and mysterious phenomena, describing the sea mystery at our back door and drawing a rough triangle connecting Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. These early articles established the geographic framework and the premise, an identifiable region with an unusual number of disappearances that later authors would elaborate into a full-blown legend.
The term Bermuda Triangle was coined in 1964 by writer Vincent Gaddis in an article for Argosy magazine, a popular men's adventure periodical. Gaddis compiled additional cases and expanded the narrative, giving the phenomenon the memorable name that would cement it in public consciousness. Gaddis later incorporated his Bermuda Triangle material into a book called Invisible Horizons, published in 1965. His work was followed by other authors who added their own cases, their own theories, and their own embellishments, creating a growing body of literature that each author treated as reliable source material without independently verifying the original claims. The legend reached its apex with the publication of The Bermuda Triangle by Charles Berlitz in 1974. Berlitz was not an ordinary paranormal writer. He was the grandson of Maximilian Berlitz, founder of the Berlitz language schools, and he carried an aura of intellectual credibility that previous Triangle authors had lacked. His book was published by a major publishing house, promoted with substantial marketing support, and sold nearly 20 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling non-fiction books of the 20th century. The Bermuda Triangle was translated into dozens of languages and reached an audience that dwarfed everything that had come before. For millions of readers around the world, Berlitz's book was the definitive account of the Bermuda Triangle mystery.
Berlitz's methodology, however, was catastrophically flawed. He compiled cases from earlier authors without checking primary sources. He described disappearances in calm weather without consulting weather records that showed severe storms. He reported vessels as vanishing within the triangle that had actually been lost hundreds of miles outside its boundaries. He attributed mysterious qualities to cases that had straightforward explanations available in official investigation reports. And most consequentially, he connected the Bermuda Triangle to the legend of Atlantis, proposing that ancient Atlantean crystal energy technology submerged on the ocean floor was responsible for the disappearances. This Atlantis connection transformed the Bermuda Triangle from a maritime puzzle into a cosmic mystery involving lost civilizations and super-advanced ancient technology.
The same year that Berlitz published his bestseller, Richard Weiner published The Devil's Triangle, another compilation of Bermuda Triangle cases that reached a wide audience. Weiner's book, while less sensational than Berlitz's, added additional cases and reinforced the narrative framework. The combined impact of the two books, published in the same year and reaching complementary audiences, created a critical mass of public awareness that transformed the Bermuda Triangle from a niche interest into a mainstream cultural phenomenon. Television documentaries followed. Hollywood films were produced. The Bermuda Triangle became one of the most recognized mystery brands in the world. The citation chain that sustained the legend is a textbook example of how unreliable information propagates. Gaddis cited Jones and Sand. Berlitz cited Gaddis. Weiner cited Berlitz. Each subsequent author cited those before them. None went back to primary sources, official investigation reports, weather records, maritime registries to verify the claims they were repeating. Errors were not corrected, but compounded. Embellishments were not checked, but incorporated. Cases that earlier authors had described tentatively became established facts in later works. The result was a body of literature that appeared comprehensive and well-sourced, but was in reality an elaborate structure of unchecked claims built on a foundation of selective evidence and outright fabrication. The publishing industry's incentive structure reinforced the problem. Books about unsolved mysteries sell better than books about solved ones. A publisher considering two manuscripts, one arguing that the Bermuda Triangle is a genuine supernatural phenomenon, and one arguing that it is a statistical illusion, will reliably choose the former because mystery sells and explanation does not. This commercial dynamic meant that debunking works, however well-researched, received a fraction of the promotion and distribution that mystery-mongering works enjoyed. The marketplace of ideas was not a level playing field. It was a marketplace where sensationalism consistently outcompeted accuracy.
The lesson of the Bermuda Triangle's literary construction extends far beyond the triangle itself. The same techniques that built the legend, selective evidence, omitted context, unchecked citation chains, the Atlantis connection, commercial incentives favoring mystery over explanation, operate in the construction of conspiracy theories across every domain. Understanding how the Bermuda Triangle was manufactured from ordinary maritime tragedies is understanding in microcosm how conspiracy theories are manufactured from ordinary events. The raw material is always real. Real ships really did sink. Real people really did die. The conspiracy is in the curation, in what is included, what is excluded, and how the included evidence is framed. Of all the theories proposed to explain the Bermuda Triangle, none is more ambitious or more revealing than the Atlantis connection. The claim that the Bermuda Triangle's anomalies are caused by the technology of a sunken civilization, crystal pyramids on the ocean floor, transmitting energy that interferes with navigation, destroys vessels, and opens portals to other dimensions, transforms the triangle from a maritime puzzle into a cosmic mystery spanning thousands of years of hidden human history. The Atlantis connection to the Bermuda Triangle has a specific origin. The predictions of Edgar Cayce, the American psychic known as the Sleeping Prophet. Between 1923 and 1944, Cayce conducted thousands of psychic readings in which he described the lost civilization of Atlantis in elaborate detail. Among his many predictions, Cayce stated that portions of Atlantis would rise again near the island of Bimini in the Bahamas, a prediction made decades before anyone had thought to connect the Bahamas region to mysterious disappearances. When the so-called Bimini Road was discovered in 1968, an underwater rock formation near North Bimini that appeared to consist of rectangular limestone blocks arranged in a linear pattern, Cayce's followers immediately declared it confirmation of his prophecy. The discovery occurred 3 years after his death, but its timing was perfect for integration into the emerging Bermuda Triangle narrative.
The Bimini Road became the physical centerpiece of the Atlantis Triangle connection. Photographs showed what appeared to be a deliberately constructed underwater road or wall, approximately half a mile long, composed of large, roughly rectangular stones. To Atlantis believers, the formation was clearly artificial, the work of an advanced ancient civilization whose technology had been lost beneath the waves. Charles Berlitz, in his 1974 book, went further. He proposed that Atlantean crystal pyramids, still active on the ocean floor, were generating energy fields that disrupted navigation instruments, caused electromagnetic anomalies, and occasionally destroyed ships and aircraft that passed over them. The crystal pyramid theory combined the appeal of lost civilizations with the pseudo-scientific language of energy fields and electromagnetic interference, creating a theory that sounded almost plausible to non-specialists. Geological investigation of the Bimini Road has been thorough and conclusive. The formation is natural beach rock, a common geological feature in tropical and subtropical coastal environments where calcium carbonate from shell fragments and coral cements beach sand into a rocky layer, which then fractures into roughly rectangular blocks as the coastline erodes. Beach rock formations similar to the Bimini Road have been documented at hundreds of locations worldwide. Radiocarbon dating of the Bimini Formation has yielded ages consistent with natural geological processes, not ancient construction. Core samples show the formation is composed of typical Bahamian beach sediment, not quarried or transported stone. The geological consensus is unanimous. The Bimini Road is a natural formation, not an artifact of a lost civilization. The broader Atlantis narrative, the story of an advanced civilization that existed thousands of years before recorded history and was destroyed by catastrophe, has no archaeological or geological support. Plato, who introduced the concept in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias around 380 BC, described Atlantis as an allegory, a philosophical thought experiment about the dangers of imperial hubris, not a factual account of a real civilization. No archaeological evidence of a civilization matching Plato's description has ever been found anywhere in the world, despite extensive exploration of the ocean floor, the Mediterranean basin, and every other proposed location. The Atlantis myth functions in conspiracy culture as a master narrative, a story so compelling and so deeply embedded in Western culture that it can be attached to virtually any mystery, lending it an aura of ancient significance.
The crystal pyramid theory specifically has been investigated and dismissed. No crystal pyramids have been detected on the floor of the Bermuda Triangle region, despite extensive sonar surveys, oceanographic expeditions, and submarine explorations conducted over decades. The ocean floor in the Triangle region has been mapped in considerable detail by NOAA, the U.S. Navy, and international oceanographic organizations. It consists primarily of the typical geological features of a continental shelf and deep ocean basin, sedimentary plains, coral formations, submarine canyons, and volcanic features. The idea that massive crystal structures could exist on the ocean floor undetected in one of the most thoroughly surveyed ocean regions in the world strains credulity beyond any reasonable limit. The alien base hypothesis represents the Bermuda Triangle's most extreme theoretical extension. Some theorists have proposed that the ocean floor in the Triangle region contains an extraterrestrial facility, either an active alien base or the remains of an alien installation. Ships and aircraft that disappear are, in this theory, taken by the aliens for study, experimentation, or some other unknown purpose. The alien base theory has no evidence whatsoever. No electromagnetic anomalies that cannot be explained by natural phenomena, no acoustic or sonar signatures consistent with artificial structures, no credible eyewitness accounts of alien encounters in the region. The theory exists primarily as a logical extension of the ancient aliens narrative and serves the same psychological function as all Bermuda Triangle theories, providing an extraordinary explanation for events that have ordinary explanations. The persistence of the Atlantis and alien theories, despite the complete absence of supporting evidence, reveals something important about how conspiracy theories function psychologically. These theories are not primarily about explaining specific events. They are about satisfying a need for wonder, for significance, for the assurance that the world contains mysteries too profound for ordinary science to comprehend. The idea that the ocean floor contains the ruins of an advanced ancient civilization or the technology of alien visitors is simply more exciting, more meaningful, and more emotionally satisfying than the idea that ships sink in storms and aircraft crash when they run out of fuel. The Bermuda Triangle theories do not compete with science on the basis of evidence. They compete with science on the basis of emotional reward.
The Atlantis connection also reveals the interconnected nature of conspiracy theories. The Bermuda Triangle theory does not exist in isolation. It is connected through the Atlantis narrative to ancient aliens theories, to crystal energy pseudoscience, to Edgar Cayce's psychic readings, and to the broader New Age spiritual framework. A person who enters the Bermuda Triangle through curiosity about maritime mysteries may exit through Atlantis into ancient aliens, and from ancient aliens into reptilian bloodlines or interdimensional consciousness theories. Conspiracy theories function as a network, with each theory serving as a gateway to others. The Bermuda Triangle, with its mainstream cultural familiarity and apparently benign subject matter, serves as one of the most accessible entry points into this broader conspiracy ecosystem. The most comprehensive and devastating debunking of the Bermuda Triangle legend was published just 1 year after Charles Berlitz's bestseller transformed the triangle into a global phenomenon. Lawrence David Kusche, a reference librarian at Arizona State University and a licensed commercial pilot, published The Bermuda Triangle Mystery Solved in 1975. Kusche did something that no previous Bermuda Triangle author had done. He went back to the primary sources. For every case that Berlitz and his predecessors had cited as evidence of the triangle's supernatural properties, Kusche located the original investigation reports, weather records, maritime registries, and contemporaneous news accounts. What he found demolished the legend's factual foundation so thoroughly that the Bermuda Triangle mystery, as a matter of evidence, was essentially solved within a year of its popularization. Kusche's findings were devastating in their specificity. He discovered that many of the disappearances cited by Berlitz had occurred during severe storms that Berlitz's account either failed to mention or explicitly denied. A ship described as vanishing in calm seas had actually gone down in a hurricane. An aircraft described as disappearing under clear skies had flown into a thunderstorm documented in Weather Service records. Berlitz had either not checked the weather data or had deliberately omitted it. Kusche concluded, charitably, that it was probably the former, since Berlitz's reliance on secondary sources meant he was repeating errors rather than creating them.
Other cases cited by Berlitz turned out to have occurred far outside the Bermuda Triangle's geographic boundaries. Ships that had been lost in the Pacific Ocean, in the Mediterranean, or in the North Atlantic far north of the Triangle's territory were included in Berlitz's catalog of triangle disappearances. When Kusche plotted the locations of every incident on a map, a significant percentage fell outside any reasonable definition of the Bermuda Triangle. The boundaries of the triangle had been flexed to include cases that supported the narrative and contracted to exclude areas where disappearance rates were low. Perhaps most damaging, Kusche found that several of Berlitz's cases simply never happened. Ships that were described as vanishing without a trace turned out to have been found, in some cases found years before Berlitz's book was published. Incidents that were presented as documented disappeared when Kusche searched for primary documentation. No maritime registry recorded the vessel. No newspaper reported its loss. No investigation was ever conducted. At least one case appeared to have been invented wholesale, a dramatic story with no verifiable historical basis of any kind. The scientific community's response to the Bermuda Triangle legend has been consistent and unambiguous across multiple agencies and institutions. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration published a formal statement declaring that there is no evidence that mysterious disappearances occur with any greater frequency in the Bermuda Triangle than in any other large, well-traveled area of the ocean. NOAA attributed the legend to a combination of environmental factors, the region's genuinely hazardous conditions, and the power of rumor and sensational reporting. The statement noted that the ocean is, by its nature, a dangerous environment, and that disappearances are a regrettable but ordinary feature of maritime activity worldwide.
Lloyd's of London provided what may be the most compelling debunking of all, simply by declining to raise its insurance premiums for vessels transiting the Bermuda Triangle. Lloyd's is the world's oldest and most data-driven insurance market. Its actuarial analyses are based on centuries of maritime loss data and billions of dollars in risk assessment. If the Bermuda Triangle were genuinely more dangerous than other ocean regions, Lloyd's would charge higher premiums for vessels crossing it, just as it charges higher premiums for vessels operating in waters with higher piracy risk or more severe weather. The fact that Lloyd's does not do this, that the market has concluded, based on its own exhaustive data, that the triangle presents no elevated risk, constitutes a powerful market-based statement about the legend's factual basis. The methane gas hydrate theory, one of the more scientifically respectable alternative explanations for the triangle, has also been investigated and found wanting. The theory proposes that sudden releases of methane gas from deposits on the ocean floor could reduce water density sufficiently to sink ships, and that rising methane could also ignite and bring down low-flying aircraft. While this is theoretically possible, the United States Geological Survey has found no evidence of large methane gas hydrate releases in the Bermuda Triangle region for at least the past 15,000 years. The ocean floor composition in the triangle does not support the conditions required for the sudden catastrophic releases the theory demands. The methane theory is an interesting scientific hypothesis, but is not supported by the regional geology. Australian scientist Karl Kruszelnicki has made the statistical case with particular clarity. The Bermuda Triangle encompasses approximately 500,000 square miles of some of the most heavily trafficked ocean in the world. When you divide the number of incidents by the volume of traffic, the resulting rate is not unusual. It is, in fact, entirely consistent with what would be expected from normal maritime and aviation operations in an equivalent area. Kruszelnicki has noted that you could draw a similar triangle over any comparably busy ocean region and, by selectively compiling incidents while omitting context, construct an equally compelling mystery. The Bermuda Triangle is not anomalous, it is ordinary, and its ordinariness has been made to look anomalous through selective reporting.
The rogue wave research conducted at the University of Southampton represents the most interesting, genuine scientific investigation inspired by the Bermuda Triangle legend. In 2023, researchers led by oceanographer Simon Boxall used laboratory wave tanks to model the ocean conditions in the Triangle region, where the Gulf Stream, Caribbean warm waters, and storms from multiple directions converge. Their models produced waves of up to 30 meters, approximately 100 feet in height, waves that could capsize even large vessels without warning. While rogue waves do not explain the Bermuda Triangle's alleged supernatural properties, they do explain some of the region's genuine maritime dangers, and they demonstrate that the real ocean is far more interesting and far more dangerous than any conspiracy theory. The comprehensive debunking of the Bermuda Triangle by Kusche, NOAA, Lloyd's, the USGS, Kruszelnicki, and others constitutes one of the most thorough and successful scientific investigations of a popular mystery ever conducted. Every major claim has been investigated. Every significant case has been re-examined against primary sources. The statistical analysis is unambiguous. The geological investigation is complete. The insurance market has spoken. By every objective measure, the Bermuda Triangle mystery has been solved. And yet, the legend persists, a fact that reveals the ultimate limitation of scientific debunking. Evidence can demolish a claim, but it cannot demolish a need. The need for mystery, for wonder, for explanations that are more dramatic than reality is built into the human mind itself. The irony of the Bermuda Triangle legend is that it obscures a reality that is, in many ways, more fascinating and more terrifying than any conspiracy theory. The ocean in the Triangle region, and indeed the ocean everywhere, is a genuinely dangerous, genuinely mysterious, and genuinely awe-inspiring environment that requires no supernatural embellishment to inspire wonder and dread. The real forces at work in the Bermuda Triangle region, forces that have actually caused the loss of ships, aircraft, and human lives, are more powerful, more complex, and more scientifically interesting than crystal pyramids or dimensional portals. Understanding these real forces is not merely an exercise in debunking, it is an invitation to appreciate the genuine majesty and genuine danger of the world's oceans.
The Gulf Stream is the dominant oceanographic feature of the Bermuda Triangle region, and it is one of the most powerful natural forces on Earth. This massive ocean current, essentially a river within the ocean, up to 60 miles wide and several thousand feet deep, flows northward from the Caribbean along the eastern coast of the United States at speeds of up to 5 knots. The Gulf Stream's power is difficult to comprehend. It transports approximately 30 million cubic meters of water per second, more than all the world's rivers combined. For mariners, the Gulf Stream presents several specific dangers. Its strong current can rapidly carry a vessel off course.
The boundary between the warm Gulf Stream water and the colder surrounding water creates turbulent conditions and sudden temperature changes that can generate fog and violent squalls. And most significantly for the Bermuda Triangle legend, the Gulf Stream can scatter debris and wreckage over enormous distances in a matter of hours, making it appear as if a vessel has vanished without a trace, when in reality its remains have simply been dispersed over hundreds of square miles. Hurricane Alley runs directly through the Bermuda Triangle. The warm waters of the Caribbean and Western Atlantic provide the thermal energy that powers Atlantic hurricanes, and the Triangle region lies squarely in the path of these massive storms. Between June and November, the region is subject to hurricanes, tropical storms, and the severe weather systems associated with them, systems that can produce sustained winds exceeding 150 miles per hour, waves exceeding 50 feet, and torrential rainfall that reduces visibility to near zero. Before the age of satellite weather forecasting, ships and aircraft had limited warning of approaching storms. A vessel that departed port under clear skies could encounter a hurricane within hours, and in the era before radio communication, there was no way to warn other vessels or shore authorities. Many of the Bermuda Triangle's attributed disappearances occurred during documented hurricane seasons in regions where severe weather was both predictable and frequently unrecorded. Rogue waves represent one of the most fascinating genuine dangers in the Bermuda Triangle region. For centuries, reports of enormous, seemingly spontaneous waves appearing on otherwise calm or moderately rough seas were dismissed by scientists as sailors' exaggerations. It was not until 1995, when a wave of 84 feet was measured by instruments on the Dropner oil platform in the North Sea, that the scientific community accepted rogue waves as a real phenomenon. In the Bermuda Triangle region, the convergence of multiple wave systems from the Gulf Stream, from Caribbean weather systems, and from Atlantic storms approaching from different directions creates conditions that are theoretically optimal for rogue wave formation. The 2023 University of Southampton study demonstrated that laboratory models of these conditions could produce waves of approximately 100 feet.
The shallow, reef-strewn waters of the Bahamas have been a hazard to navigation for as long as vessels have sailed in the region. The Bahamas consist of over 700 islands and cays spread across approximately 100,000 square miles of shallow water with coral reefs, sandbars, and underwater rock formations that can trap or destroy vessels with little warning. The transition from the deep water of the Atlantic to the shallow waters of the Bahamas Bank can be extremely abrupt. A vessel sailing in water thousands of feet deep can, within a short distance, find itself in water only a few feet deep. In conditions of poor visibility, fog, rain, night, this transition has caught navigators by surprise for centuries, grounding vessels on reefs or sandbanks from which they could not be freed. Magnetic declination, the difference between magnetic north and true north, has been cited by conspiracy theorists as evidence of electromagnetic anomalies in the Bermuda Triangle, but the reality is both more mundane and more interesting. The agonic line, the line where magnetic north and true north coincide, has shifted westward over the centuries as the Earth's magnetic field has changed. In Columbus time, it passed through the Bahamas, meaning compass readings in the region were actually unusually accurate rather than unusually inaccurate. In the modern era, the agonic line has moved to approximately the longitude of the Gulf of Mexico, meaning navigators in the Bermuda Triangle must account for a small but non-trivial magnetic declination. This is standard navigational practice worldwide and is in no way anomalous to the Triangle region.
Waterspouts, rotating columns of water and spray formed by whirlwinds over warm ocean water, are common in the Bermuda Triangle region, particularly during the warmer months. While waterspouts are generally weaker than land-based tornadoes, they can produce wind speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour and can capsize small boats or damage larger vessels. The warm waters and atmospheric instability of the Caribbean create ideal conditions for waterspout formation, and multiple waterspouts can form simultaneously. A small vessel encountering an unexpected waterspout in poor visibility could be destroyed before its crew had time to send a distress signal.
The vastness of the search area represents perhaps the most underappreciated factor in the Bermuda Triangle mystery. The triangle encompasses approximately 500,000 square miles of open ocean. A vessel in distress in the center of this region could be hundreds of miles from the nearest Coast Guard station, the nearest naval vessel, with the nearest airport. Before the era of satellite-based emergency locator transmitters, a sinking vessel that was unable to send a radio distress signal due to rapid sinking, equipment failure, or catastrophic damage might simply go unnoticed until it failed to arrive at its destination, by which time the search area could encompass tens of thousands of square miles. The ocean is vast, and in that vastness, the disappearance of a ship or aircraft, while tragic, is not mysterious. It is a predictable consequence of operating in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The real ocean is a far more compelling subject than the fictional Bermuda Triangle. The deep Atlantic contains hydrothermal vents that support ecosystems independent of sunlight, submarine volcanoes that reshape the ocean floor, and creatures that have never been observed by human eyes. The Gulf Stream influences global climate patterns and has shaped the economic and political history of the Atlantic world. Hurricane formation and behavior remain among the most important and challenging problems in atmospheric science. Rogue waves challenge our understanding of fluid dynamics and ocean engineering. These are genuine mysteries, mysteries with the potential for genuine discovery, and they deserve the attention that has been squandered on a manufactured legend about crystal pyramids and dimensional portals. The Bermuda Triangle has been debunked more thoroughly, more comprehensively, and more repeatedly than almost any other popular mystery. The evidence has been examined, the cases re-investigated, the statistics calculated, the geology surveyed, and the insurance premiums unchanged. By every objective measure, the mystery has been solved. And yet, the Bermuda Triangle remains one of the most recognized and most believed mysteries in the world. New documentaries are produced every year. New books are published. YouTube channels dedicated to the Triangle accumulate millions of subscribers. The phrase Bermuda Triangle continues to function in everyday language as shorthand for inexplicable disappearance. The legend is, by all evidence, immortal, and understanding why it refuses to die reveals something important about the relationship between evidence, narrative, and human psychology.
The cultural infrastructure supporting the Bermuda Triangle legend is vast and commercially motivated. Since Berlitz's 1974 bestseller, dozens of books have been published on the subject, each finding new cases to add, new theories to propose, and new audiences to reach. Television networks have produced hundreds of documentaries, each constructed around the same narrative template: dramatic reenactments of disappearances, interviews with believers, tantalizing questions left unanswered, and the implication that something extraordinary is occurring in those waters. Hollywood has produced films set in the Bermuda Triangle. Video games have used it as a setting. The Triangle has been featured in episodes of virtually every science fiction and mystery television series of the past 50 years. This cultural infrastructure generates its own momentum. Each new production introduces the legend to a new audience, and each new audience generates demand for more productions. The Internet has given the Bermuda Triangle legend a second life that it might not have achieved through traditional media alone. YouTube is particularly effective as a distribution platform for Bermuda Triangle content. Documentary-style videos combining dramatic narration, historical footage, and compelling visual effects can be produced at relatively low cost and reach enormous audiences through the platform's recommendation algorithm. A viewer who watches one Bermuda Triangle video will be recommended others, creating a pipeline of increasing engagement. The comments sections of these videos function as community spaces where believers reinforce each other's convictions and newcomers are welcomed into the mystery. The tourism industry has embraced the Bermuda Triangle with an enthusiasm that might seem paradoxical. Why would a region allegedly responsible for the disappearance of ships and planes actively market its reputation for danger? The answer is that the Bermuda Triangle brand generates curiosity, and curiosity generates visitors. Bermuda and the Bahamas have incorporated triangle imagery into their tourism marketing. Cruise lines advertise voyages through the Bermuda Triangle as adventures. Gift shops in the region sell Bermuda Triangle-themed merchandise. The legend, far from hurting the local tourism economy, has become one of its most valuable assets. The commercial interests of the tourism and entertainment industries create powerful incentives to keep the legend alive, regardless of its factual basis.
The Bermuda Triangle has also become a general-purpose metaphor in everyday language. When objects disappear inexplicably, socks in the laundry, files on a computer, items in a cluttered office, people refer to the Bermuda Triangle. When organizations or processes seem to consume inputs without producing outputs, they are described as Bermuda Triangles. This metaphorical usage has detached the phrase from its geographic and conspiratorial origins, embedding it so deeply in colloquial language that most people who use it are not making a claim about the Atlantic Ocean, but expressing a universal human experience, the frustration of things that vanish without explanation. The debunking failure of the Bermuda Triangle illustrates a fundamental limitation of evidence-based argumentation when confronting narratives that serve psychological needs. Kusche's investigation was meticulous, comprehensive, and conclusive. His findings were confirmed by NOAA, Lloyd's of London, the USGS, and multiple independent researchers. The evidence is overwhelming and unambiguous. The Bermuda Triangle is not anomalously dangerous. And yet, the debunking has barely dented public belief. This is because the Bermuda Triangle legend does not compete with science on the basis of evidence. It competes on the basis of emotional satisfaction. The mystery provides wonder, excitement, and the delicious chill of the unexplained. The debunking provides statistics, weather records, and the anticlimactic conclusion that ships sink in storms. The psychological research on belief persistence is directly applicable to the Bermuda Triangle. Studies have consistently shown that once a belief is established, presenting contrary evidence often strengthens rather than weakens it, a phenomenon known as the backfire effect. When believers encounter debunking information, their minds generate counter-arguments, question the debunker's motives, and reinterpret the evidence in ways that preserve the original belief. The Bermuda Triangle legend is particularly resistant to debunking because it can always generate new cases, new theories, and new arguments faster than debunkers can address them. The legend is a moving target, and each new documentary or YouTube video resets the playing field.
The generational renewal of the legend ensures its survival. Each new generation encounters the Bermuda Triangle for the first time, unaware of the debunking that has been conducted, unaware of Kusche's investigation or NOAA's statement.
For a teenager watching a Bermuda Triangle documentary on YouTube in 2025, the mystery feels as fresh and as urgent as it did for a reader picking up Berlitz's book in 1974. The debunking exists. It is available to anyone who seeks it, but it does not have the same cultural presence, the same production values, or the same emotional appeal as the legend itself. Mystery is always more popular than explanation. The Bermuda Triangle's refusal to die is, ultimately, a testament to the power of narrative over evidence. Human beings are storytelling creatures. We understand the world through stories, and the stories we find most compelling are not necessarily the ones that are most true, but the ones that are most satisfying, the ones that have drama, mystery, danger, wonder, and the tantalizing possibility that the world is stranger and more significant than it appears. The Bermuda Triangle is a great story. The debunking is not a great story. It is an inventory of errors, corrections, and statistical analyses. Until science learns to tell stories as compelling as the mysteries it debunks, the Bermuda Triangle will endure. The Bermuda Triangle is a lesson, not about the ocean, not about electromagnetic anomalies, not about lost civilizations, but about us. About how we construct mysteries from ordinary events, how we sustain beliefs against overwhelming evidence, and how the human appetite for wonder can be manipulated by those who profit from it. The Bermuda Triangle is perhaps the cleanest, most perfectly documented example of a manufactured mystery in modern history. A case where we can trace, step by step, how an unremarkable stretch of ocean was transformed into the most famous geographical enigma on Earth through the systematic application of a few simple techniques: selective evidence, omitted context, unchecked citation, and the commercial incentive to mystify rather than explain.
The techniques that built the Bermuda Triangle legend are the same techniques that build conspiracy theories in every domain. Selective evidence, choosing cases that support the narrative while ignoring those that do not. Omitted context, describing disappearances without mentioning the storms, the structural failures, or the human errors that caused them. Unchecked citation chains, repeating claims from previous authors without verifying them against primary sources, so that errors compound and fabrications become established facts. Commercial incentives, the reality that mystery sells and explanation does not, ensuring that sensational claims receive disproportionate amplification while debunking languishes in relative obscurity. The Bermuda Triangle has become a standard case study in critical thinking curricula worldwide, a teaching tool used in high schools, universities, and science communication programs to illustrate how pseudoscientific claims are constructed and how they can be evaluated. Students are asked to examine the evidence for the Bermuda Triangle, to identify the rhetorical techniques used to present it, and to discover the primary source evidence that debunks it. The exercise is valuable precisely because the triangle is a relatively safe conspiracy theory. It does not promote hatred, it does not endanger public health, and it does not undermine democratic institutions. It is a sandbox for developing critical thinking skills that can be applied to more consequential claims. The parallel to more dangerous conspiracy theories is direct and instructive.
The techniques that built the Bermuda Triangle legend, selective evidence, omitted context, unchecked citation, commercial incentives, are the same techniques that build anti-vaccine movements, climate change denial, election fraud claims, and every other form of manufactured doubt that threatens democratic society. Learning to identify these techniques in the relatively harmless context of the Bermuda Triangle prepares individuals to recognize them in contexts where the stakes are infinitely higher. The triangle is a training ground for the cognitive skills that democratic citizenship requires. There is also a legitimate lesson about institutional trust embedded in the Bermuda Triangle story. The debunking of the triangle was accomplished not by conspiracy theories, but by institutions, a university librarian, a government oceanic agency, a venerable insurance market, a geological survey, and the scientific peer review process. These institutions, imperfect, sometimes slow, sometimes frustrating, produced accurate, reliable, verifiable conclusions that have withstood decades of scrutiny. The Bermuda Triangle legend was produced by individuals operating outside these institutional frameworks, authors who did not check primary sources, publishers who prioritized sales over accuracy, and documentarians who prioritized entertainment over truth. The lesson is not that institutions are infallible, but that the institutional framework of scientific investigation, with its emphasis on evidence, verification, and peer review, produces more reliable knowledge than the alternative. The human appetite for mystery deserves respect, even as the specific mystery of the Bermuda Triangle is debunked. The desire to believe that the world contains unexplained wonders, that the ocean hides secrets, that lost civilizations left traces, that reality is stranger and more significant than it appears, is not a pathology. It is a feature of the human mind, probably an adaptive one, that has driven exploration, scientific discovery, and artistic creation throughout our history. The problem is not the appetite for mystery, but the satisfaction of that appetite with manufactured mysteries that distort evidence and mislead understanding. The solution is not to suppress wonder, but to redirect it toward the genuine mysteries that surround us. The ocean itself provides all the mystery anyone could want. The deep Atlantic remains one of the least explored environments on Earth, less thoroughly mapped than the surface of Mars. Hydrothermal vents on the mid-Atlantic ridge support ecosystems that challenge our understanding of life's requirements. The behavior of the Gulf Stream influences global climate in ways we are still learning to model. Hurricane formation and intensification remain incompletely understood despite decades of research. The biological diversity of the deep ocean includes species unknown to science. These are genuine mysteries, puzzles that may yield genuine discoveries, genuine understanding, and genuine wonder. They deserve the attention that the Bermuda Triangle has undeservedly received.
The Bermuda Triangle legend will persist for as long as human beings prefer stories to statistics, mystery to explanation, and wonder to verification. It will be retold by every generation, adapted for every new medium, and believed by every new audience that encounters it without access to the debunking that has accompanied it.
This is not a failure of science, it is a description of human nature. The challenge for scientists, educators, and communicators is not to eliminate the appetite for mystery, but to demonstrate that real investigation, the careful, systematic, evidence-based exploration of the unknown, produces rewards that are deeper, more lasting, and more genuinely wondrous than any manufactured legend. Perhaps the most important lesson of the Bermuda Triangle is about intellectual humility, about the willingness to accept that the world does not owe us a mystery at every turn, and that finding a mundane explanation for a seemingly extraordinary event is not a failure of imagination, but a triumph of investigation. The scientists, librarians, and insurers who debunked the Bermuda Triangle were not less imaginative than the authors who created it. They were more disciplined. They subjected their imaginations to the discipline of evidence, and in doing so, produced conclusions that are less exciting but infinitely more reliable. The world needs both imagination and discipline. The tragedy of the Bermuda Triangle legend is that it celebrated the former at the expense of the latter, and in doing so, trained millions of people to prefer the thrill of mystery over the harder, slower, but ultimately more rewarding work of understanding. The waters between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico are beautiful. They are warm, clear, and filled with marine life of extraordinary diversity. They are also, occasionally, dangerous, subject to storms, currents, and the unpredictable forces of a dynamic ocean system. Ships will continue to cross them, aircraft will continue to fly over them, and occasionally, tragically, some will not arrive at their destinations. This is the reality of the sea, not a mystery, not a conspiracy, not a supernatural phenomenon, but a consequence of operating in an environment that is, and always has been, more powerful than the machines we send into it. The Bermuda Triangle is not where ships and planes vanish into the unknown. It is where human beings encounter the known power of the ocean, the known limitations of technology, and the known fragility of human life, and, unable to accept its ordinariness, transform it into legend.